Good morning and welcome back to the Good Morning Anambra, where we'll bring you the discussion segment. And of course, we'll be looking at a very important topic, making banking easier and more user-friendly in Nigeria in commemoration of the International Day for Banks. Of course, that was yesterday, the 4th of December 2025. Of course, when we talk about banking in Nigeria, a lot of things would normally come to your mind. A whole lot of, well, I say, for some persons, when you talk about banking, they tend to be really very happy. Talking about people who own shares in the bank, people who are part of the board, and a whole lot of things. But for persons who are not really proud of the digits in their bank account, they do not really, when you mention banks, they do not really sound really very happy. It's a mixture of, feelings and a whole lot of that. Probably one of the reasons, and many other issues surrounding banking in Nigeria nowadays. When it comes to insecurity, banking seem to have, how best do I put it, a connection to the rise of insecurity in Nigeria, where ransoms are being collected via bank accounts and a whole lot of issues around banking. According to reports, currently in Nigeria we have about 750 banks, of which in 25 of them are the major commercial banks we have in Nigeria. The major ones, I don't want to mention their names, and the rest are the microfinance bank and other probably services banks and a whole lot of things. We can't also take away the fact that they've been increased over the years since banking started in Nigeria, formerly in Nigeria in the 1960s, and then in recent times we've seen digitalization, we've seen a whole lot of things, the BVN, I think in recent times we've also seen the use of TIN and a whole lot of things via the banking sector and a whole lot of things. So probably that's one of the reasons why we'll be talking about the topic I mentioned earlier, making banking easier and more user-friendly. And we'll be discussing this with a very resourceful person, talking about Dr. Nonso Ekesiobi, who's a lecturer, Department of Economics, right there from the Chukwuemeka Odumegwu University, the Igbariam campus. Of course, probably you've seen his face a couple of times here, but we'll be digging deep, looking into this development this morning. With him. Welcome, Dr. Nonso Ekesiobi. Thank God it's Friday. Of course, the Fridays are really very important. It's always that time for us to wind down. Believe me, I was really very happy yesterday because I was thinking yesterday was Wednesday, but I was discussing with someone. I said, today is actually Thursday. I was like, meaning tomorrow being today is Friday. I was like, oh wow. So it gave me that kind of feeling. All right, let's set the ball rolling. Rolling this morning, Dr. Nonso Ekesiobi. Let's look at the issue. Why is it very important for us to talk about this, especially in commemoration of the International Day for banking, which was yesterday? Why is it very important for us to talk about bank and how they should make banking easier and more user friendly?
I'll start on a lighter note. We said today is Friday, and normally people go shopping for weekend activities. Given our own environment, we are planning for the weekend of social events, especially weddings, anniversaries, house openings, and some other celebrations. So, being in an informal economy like we have in Nigeria, most of our activities, most of our transactions are usually cash-based. So, for you to get this cash, you will need to visit one financial institution or the other, or a financial service provider, which in this case we can, group the banks there. So banks are there to provide financial services. Fine. And this financial services is in a way trying to bridge the gap between those who have funds and those who seek funds. So that is why we refer to them as financial intermediaries. So as intermediaries, their role is to, make, financial services, financial transactions convenient for both the giver and the receiver. So celebrating the World Day for banks is also very important to look at, not just how far we have come, especially in the evolution of our banking industry, but what the future lies for us, especially just like you mentioned, in this evolution, in this contemporary times where technology and digitalization has made, that space more, more sophisticated. At the same time, with the rise of fintechs, so we need to understand that, their role as financial intermediaries is even more pronounced, is even more, important at the moment than it used to be. So coming back to the question as to how our banking sector has fared or is faring, well, so far so good. We've had ups, we've had downs. At the moment, they are still in the phase of recapitalization, where they've been told to they moved their capital base from 25 billion to, I think, about 500, 200, and 100 or so,
Yeah,
depending on the categorization you have been given, or they've been there. So most banks are already, striving to meet up with this. Some have actually met up. So while they are struggling, or they are striving, let me not say struggling, while they are striving to meet up with these new requirements on the regulatory side, it's also very important to look at how far they have fared as far as service delivery is concerned. You and I, practically, we may have different opinions, but I don't think there is any Nigerian now that we score them, an average Nigerian, let me not say any Nigerian, an average Nigerian that we score them a perfect A in terms of rating the quality of the service delivery. Like I said, we work with banks, especially given our cash-based economy. But how far have these guys delivered on the mandate of, cash services? Before we begin to look at other, activities that banks are supposed to engage in terms of financing small and medium-scale enterprises, in terms of what's it called, trainings, financial literacy trainings, and the rest, serving as a go-between, transmitting the directives, the instructions, the activities going on in the financial space as far as the central bank is concerned, in terms of regulations that concern moving cash, what interest rates will look like, how do you manage foreign exchange. So why is it that, for instance, let me just poke one hole in all these things. Why is it, for instance, you go to banks and you find it difficult to get cash, but you can go to a POS operator and you get the cash?
Yeah, that's actually a very...
Why is it difficult to go to banks and when you need foreign exchange, you hardly get it from there, but when you go down to the bureau de change operator across the street, you see those same foreign exchange you are looking for. And it's but when we discuss foreign exchange data, statistics, we always quote the official rate. But how many of us get this foreign exchange in the official rate? These are the things that slows down economic activity. You mentioned the issue of security, but I won't want to go there because that will take us another program, another segment, another program entirely. Because normally, if you one of the ways of apprehending these people who are into this banditry business or ransom or kidnapping economy, as I want to call it, is to follow the money. Why is it that they provide you account numbers, bank details, and you make these transactions, and you cannot trace that the movement of that money to where the final destination? Why is it that it is easy for people to either withdraw huge sums of money, for this kind of activities, and when these monies are are withdrawn, you cannot trace it, and when they are received and brought back into the financial system, you cannot trace it. So these things are questions begging for answers.
All right. Let's begin to look at accessibility for banks, especially um, not for banks, but for the unbanked. You know, we have the banked, we have the unbanked. When we're talking about for the listener out there, when we are talking about the unbanked, we are basically talking about people who do not have, bank accounts, or who do not have bank accounts in certain, banks. Let's look at the situation of the unbanked, especially in rural areas, or accessibility for the banked too. For example, people go as far as from Agolo to Oka to, if they need a banking service, or they need to make inquiries about their transactions that may have gone wrong. They move all the way from Agolo, from Nanka, to come to Oka to settle some banking issues, probably because there are no banking branches really very close to them, and a whole lot. We see that in many places. And when you go to some places in the north central part of the country, or in the middle belt part of the country, we see this a lot. People travel in kilometers just to get banking services, or a whole lot of this. So how can banks look into developments of this nature?
Well, there are two things. One, it is you understand the plight of consumers, bank customers, who have to travel miles, spend 1 hour, time, transportation, and even the risk involved in planning routes these days, just to access financial services. You understand their concern, but you also have to look at it from the side of the banks. Now, banks are also there to make business, to make profit. So most banks are at the moment with this consolidation and this thing. So they're looking for ways to remain competitive, and one of the ways is being efficient. Trying to achieve more with less. Less now implies less manpower, less branches.
Yeah.
Now we are in a digital era where we are now moving into the phase of branchless banking.
Yeah.
So trying to limit physical contact as much as possible by leveraging technology. And with the way we have the way AI is going now, artificial intelligence is going now, we are moving into a phase where we'll be having personalized, banks are supposed to be having personalized services, proactive services, where instead of coming to meet physically with an agent or a customer care representative or customer relations representative, you do so virtually. But even the call stations, most of them have. I personally have had issues where I've tried to reach them, a particular bank via phone, and when you get the person is not even
giving you the response you need.
Yes, it's not even encouraging you or trying to give you the impression that, okay, we are here to serve you, or we are here to solve your problem. It's crazy. And that's why personally I am happy with the advent of fintech services. Like you said, you don't want to mention it. But I'm happy because those guys understand what, maybe as latecomers into this thing, trying to play catch up. So they are being innovative. So what is causing, or what is preventing our banks from being innovative enough to be able to give real-time solution, real-time responses to people's challenges in terms of improving user experience? So how do they improve their user interface such that when you have a problem, you are bound to get a solution in that particular day. Let us not say minutes, but in that particular day. Why is it difficult for you to resolve issues as basic as a transfer that didn't go through? Then how do you get your reversal? They keep telling you 1 week time, 2 weeks time, 10 working days. Very soon they will include 4 market days. But the bottom line is this: whether they are trying, they are. But we also need to, face the realities that yes, we can do more, we can do better. And again, how do they motivate their staff to work hard. You know, like I mentioned, with the way they are cutting costs, you know, laying off people, especially where, you know, they now have technologies, they now have workstation packages that, you know, are substituting human effort. So how do they keep those ones who are left, you know, motivated? Well, how do they keep them, how do they encourage them, you know, boost their morale to continue to deliver? In the banking industry now, they have a very high turnover rate. Turnover in the sense that, you know, people don't come into one bank and work, you know, and build a career in it. You work for like 10, 15 years, 20 years, yeah. It's either they move from that bank to another bank, or they jackpot.
Or they leave the country, yeah.
I
very much agree with you. I've got a number of friends. Yes, I see. That's what, you know, I've got a couple of friends who've done that. Most of them who've worked in the bank, that's what they work for years, you know, make lots of contact to do well for themselves. And the next time you call their Nigerian numbers, you can't get them. Or somehow they chat you up and say, Alpha, no, they again, no, these are, you know, that kind of thing. So, but that's that. But let's look at, you know, how banks can actually support and, you know, help small businesses. For young people, when you look at the, you know, how they are supporting businesses, especially in terms of loans, not just small business, but normal businesses that have stood over the years. The loans, the interest rates are quite heartbreaking. A couple of weeks ago, we saw reports on the newspapers that the man that is in Manufacturing Association of Nigeria complained about the interest rate and all that. So how can banks, even if it's not their loans, how can banks actually help, support small businesses to grow better?
You know, I've talked about their interventions as far as financial literacy is concerned. It is not just their jobs to provide money to those who need money, but to also, you know, go the extra mile in trying to educate people on the do's and don'ts of cash, of finance. Because no matter what, if you give people money without them knowing the necessary, the basics of how to, you know, utilize those funds, you'll be
it becomes an issue.
Yes, you'll be having this problem of bad debt. And like I said, banks are there to make profit. So they will always be skeptical. They won't be so open in terms of giving out loanable funds. That is why sometimes instead of giving an outright rejection, they will start giving you some sort of crazy
terms
and conditions that you have to fulfill. By going to bring your great grandfather's birth certificate and your community land. Let's come to the reality of it. We know that these businesses you mentioned are the life wire of economic activity.
Yeah, of a serious economy.
Yeah, yes, because no country exists on only government intervention. That is why when I see government doing a lot of things, government is giving subsidy, government is giving this, is giving student loan, government is giving business finance and giving this. Government is basically doing too much. What government is supposed to do is to clear the space.
Yes, make the environment very
make the environment attractive, and every other thing will follow suit. So, in that case, it is not the responsibility of the government to come and start giving you a guideline on how to use money or how not to use money. This is where banks are supposed to come in, organize seminars. There's one activity I saw with the Central Bank of Nigeria. They had in Oka here, where they were enlightening, business operators around the state here on financial services and what is about to go on, especially with the new tax policy and the rest of them. So these are the kind of activities that banks are supposed to be doing as businesses. What should they be expecting with for instance, the takeoff of the tax policy by January next year, and how do they avert it? How do they start keeping good records, their financial records, their transactions? how do they make sure that this they are when they are invited for tax assessment, they fulfill the necessary requirements? How do businesses know the difference between the operating capital and their profit, and how maybe to reinvest, other investment options and stuff like that? So these are the things that banks should be looking at. And again, you don't expect banks, banks work in a competitive environment. They cannot bring down the lending rate, below a particular expectation, except there is a coordination in the financial system, where maybe starting with the central bank, maybe reducing a monetary policy rate, that is the interest rate, MPR,
exactly.
reducing money, so that it will encourage banks to come and take money from them at a lesser rate, and also transmit same to the final borrower. So, but these are things that are not necessarily within their capacity, but it is discouraging. It is discouraging investment, because when people don't come to take monies,
the monies will just be there.
The monies will just be there,
and the economy hanging too.
It is not everybody. It is not, our economy doesn't have hundreds of the likes of Dangote that you can lend money to, and you know that the money will not go bad, and you can see it being productive. The banks can have some level of interventions where they invite people to come and pitch ideas that they can fund, and maybe even at some point become part owners in those business interventions, those business ideas that they will fund, or maybe create an opportunity where institutional investors can come in. Banks can invite institutional investors to come in and look at lucrative options available from those who have submitted requests for financial assistance. Those kind of things are there. Then banks can also improve their services with the way they work with government specialized banks. Because another thing is information. When information is not widespread, opportunities will pass people. I know that we have government specialized institutions that are there to provide development assistance in certain areas, certain sectors. For instance, we have the Bank of Agriculture.
The BOA.
And at some point they were talking about recapitalizing the Bank of Agriculture. The same thing with the Bank of Industry. We also have the Development Bank of Nigeria. Not too long ago, Nigeria is going to be the headquarters of the African Energy Bank. So it's a bank that is also to provide financial services for those in the energy sector, or for even making it available to households and businesses. So if you need loans, for instance, to set up a business, and you instead of relying on off-grid sources like diesel generators, you want to install solar facility to give you power. Those things have high initial costs that most businesses cannot finance.
Take up immediately.
That is the essence of this specialized energy bank, for instance.
We've seen that. I think they collaborated with some of these commercial banks. We've seen them most of the times.
These banks now should find a way of partnering with these government specialized banks. I think we also have the Development Bank of Nigeria. What services do they have? Then how do they make the awareness? How do they improve the?
How do people really know this is what they do and all that?
They do, and what
key into it.
Yes, how can they assist them with the necessary paperwork, documentation, so they can take this money? Because when they actually take this money from this development
and put it into the economy,
they will now put it into the economy through these commercial banks. That's why they are intermediaries.
All right, thank you.
You mentioned the issue of commercial. Not commercial. Microfinance. The essence.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. Okay. I assure you, we'll come back to that. Let's just take a short break. Let us listen to the voice from the streets, and when we come back, we continue this discussion and, of course, round up.
In terms of giving loans, there are so many small-scale industries that couldn't afford loans. So I think that banks should be a little bit friendly and lower in interest. So another thing is that in terms of withdrawing. I think that ATM and POS, they're all okay, but because of fraud, they should look for another strategy, either online banking that will give one access to withdraw direct through like POS or some other way. But I think that the best is reducing their own interest to customers. It will help and it will go a long way.
First of all, when you talk about customers, there are big customers and there are small customers. The big ones, for me, can take care of themselves. They have money already and they can always pay the interest and make the big money. But the other customers are young people that are coming out of school and want to start something. And they are also the people that need this support, the financial support, all right? And of course, others who are not graduates, but young people coming up. So when it's question of like somebody asking for 100,000, 200,000, even 500,000, it doesn't mean much for a good business to start. So if the banks want to help people like that, they should reduce the interest rate they charge to the minimum for those people. They should reduce it to the minimum. And all these excesses that they demand, when you send text message, they take 15 naira. When you talk, they take, it shouldn't be because they have never been before. They have never been before. We are witnessing them recently. It shouldn't be, they're not helping the customers in any way.
The most disturbing one is allowing people to access their funds. When you walk into the bank, you'll be able to make your withdrawal conveniently, or you go to ATM, you get your money conveniently, than sending you back to a POS agent whom will begin to take some certain kind of charges. Sometimes you have to buy your money with your money again, you know. So these are the areas, if they touch and improve on, it will help people and attract people to bank. Some banks are trying, I won't call names, and some really need to, you know, do more.
As compared to before, banking services are actually much more affordable than what we have 5 years before or 10 years before. Customers now can afford to open bank accounts, carry out transactions with zero to no charges to them. We have traditional banks or we have fintech organizations that are coming out almost every month to make these things easier. But so you can't really say it's the banks. It's the impetus is laid on the banks now. So if you ask me, I'll tell you these things are based on infrastructure providers like your telecommunication companies, MTN, Airtel, and likes of it. So if you want to bank on, if those infrastructure upgrade is not on banks now, it's on, because the banks have done their part. It is very seamless for you to carry out transactions now. It is just on those infrastructure providers to do their own part, not the banks.
Right, welcome back from that break. We listened and saw what the people in the street had to say about banks, especially when we were talking about making banking easier and more user-friendly. And very much in correlation with the World Day of Banks, which was celebrated yesterday. And with us in the studio, Dr. Nonso Ekesio, who is a lecturer at the Department of Economics, not the Nnamdi Azikiwe University, but the Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu University in that is the Igbariam campus. And you agree with me that he's been doing justice to this topic and all that. But let's quickly hit the point. Let's quickly just hit really very important aspect of this. Believe me, lots of questions. If you give me 2-3 hours, I've got lots of questions to ask you on this. So but let's look at fraudulent activities through banking apps and accounts, especially now we're seeing kidnappings going around the country, and some of these monies are being, or some of these ransom being asked, being sent to accounts and all that. And when these things happen, it seems like the federal government or the police or security operatives find it difficult to trace these monies. So what's your take on that?
On this issue of security is not something banks alone can navigate. It's something that banks will have to do yes, internally, by improving the security features of their services. For instance, I see no reason why, huge amounts of money will be moving around, and you cannot trace them to the point of withdrawal. And again, I know there is a requirement by law that when transactions exceed a particular amount, you notify the EFCC, I think.
Of course.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. So what are they doing with those kind of information? Are they just allowing it pass? And again, then again the issue of still on the internal efforts they need to do, strengthening their security networks such that people don't get easily defrauded. One of the reasons why people are not so engaged, initially you talked about those who are unbanked, and that is one serious indicator of financial inclusion. You cannot talk of financial development when, in the Nigerian case, about 40% of Nigerians or thereabout, 35 to 40% of Nigerians don't have bank accounts. Yes, and if you move further, you have about 10 to 20% of those who have bank accounts, but those accounts are now dormant.
Dormant, not making
So
use
how
of them.
then do you try to improve the acceptability, bring people on board into this? So it's by making these technology features more believable, so that somebody cannot lose money, by virtue of being compromised or having your account hacked or stuff like that. Then you now talk of how they look at their staffing as well. Sometimes I've seen a situation where I won't mention names, but I had a situation where somebody who was kidnapped was telling those who had him in custody that he didn't have money, and they called in his presence. They called somebody who was working in a bank, and the person told him the account balance of that hostage, and he got the beating of his life. So you see, sometimes, how do we say it in our own tradition? That it is insider information that the rats, outside, we know what is happening in inside. So if you don't have those kind of compromises, by staff who betray the ethics,
trust,
the trust that the public has for them, and the requirements of the bank.
It becomes an issue.
Yes, it becomes an issue. Then you look at, then you mentioned the second one you mentioned was on talking about convenience. Yeah, when you talk of convenience and how they improve it, yes, technology again still comes in.
Not just convenience, but the average banked person having access to his or her cash.
You see, like I said, we had the cashless policy at some point, and instead of the cashless policy trying to encourage people, to nudge them into migrating into a cashless or digital transaction, it was becoming more punitive. I know we have this kind of resistance to this kind of innovations. So it was quite worrisome. At the end of the day, there was a time they even came up with this issue of cash swapping, and that didn't really go down well. So eventually, that is where we now come to the last issue where you talked about housing support.
Yes. We have to look at that housing support, because now it's actually an issue.
I mentioned
how banks can actually help people.
I mentioned earlier that we have specialized banks for certain things. Banks on their own, yes, they have. Some of them have financial packages that can help in helping individuals, especially civil servants, petty traders, small business owners, to own a home. Nigeria has a housing deficit of about 10 to 20 million Nigerians having a housing deficit. So we have the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. how then do we leverage the activities, the
And
services?
they've been, in recent times, they've been actually funding, low-cost homes across. But
Personally, I have benefited from their service. Yeah, because I am a light.
And you know that something like that
yes,
actually
exists. So I've benefited from the service. But how can others? I don't know if you have, but
No, I've not benefited, but I know something like that.
So it exists. So how then can banks help these people to connect them to these kind of financial opportunities lying there? So the services must not be left solely for banks to provide. There are other agents that need to come in to also assist these banks to deliver on their mandate.
All right, we've done justice to, believe me, like I said, lots of questions to ask, a lot of things to still talk about, but of course we're very much behind schedule this morning. So thank you, Dr. Nonso Ekesiobi, lecturer at Department of Economics, Chukwemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu University, the Igbariam campus, for joining us this morning on this really very important topic, making banking easier and moving and making it more user-friendly. Thank you again for joining us this morning. All right, of course, we've got Catch the Balls and other quite entertaining programs for you this morning. So keep that locked on ABS television this morning. And you can still watch on the go when you join us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website to still follow up on some of the developments we've got for you this morning. My name is Obi Naikechko. Do have a very positive day ahead.